resources they need. And then when the hospital shut down, then it.
Thank you for reminding. All right. Well, let's go ahead. It is 3 o'clock. Let's call this meeting to order. This is the police committee meeting on October 10th at 3 p.m. Present here are Dave Gursky, Lieutenant, right?
Yes.
And Counselor Ruth Causey. Diane Crocker will be a few minutes late. I'm Teresa Nielsen, and our city manager, Chris Workman, is here. Thank you, Chris. We don't have any minutes, I believe, for approval. I didn't see any minutes, so we'll skip from that into into talking about our agenda for today, and we'll give some time to Officer Gursky.
So I know this memo that Ken and I put together, you guys got to review that. It was in the council packet. I don't want to go over all of the things that you've already read, touch on some of this stuff. I think number one is there are two different types of photo enforcement. And one of them is enforces red light violations in intersections. And then also there's a photo radar component on some of those that can be turned on as well. So you can use those in conjunction. I know up in Beaverton, they also have some standalone units that are used for photo radar, and they're not set up in an intersection, but they're on like a 4-lane highway. And there's quite a bit of traffic, significant number of vehicles that travel on that highway. And then the citations can only be issued for 11 miles or higher or greater over the speed limit. That's the threshold that's been set.
Is that the state law?
That's, yep. In fact, leave under ORS 810. Let's see which one that is. 810.434.
That's good to know. I thought that seemed a little high.
So then additionally, when they do have a violation that is captured with whether it's photo red light or photo radar, they take a picture of the vehicle, the driver, and then the license plate, and then there's a short video clip. That's typically something they can access online. So then you've got to have trained staff, either sworn or staff that's unsworn has to be trained, usually from a company like, I believe it's Vera.
Is this training by the manufacturer?
It is, yes.
Okay.
So we would either contract someone, an employee of our department or that company to review that, or how would that work?
No, it's so Vera Mobility provides the training that or whatever vendor that you go with.
Okay.
And then they provide specific training for IDing the person that is the registered owner. So you capture the registration information off the license plate. That then needs to be run. And then you need to verify with a photograph, which is provided through DMV for the registered owner. So you would look at that and you would compare those. If you can make a positive ID based on the training that you received from the vendor as a verified traffic or trained traffic agent, then they also train you and you're certified to be able to testify in court to what you've seen and what you've reviewed. And so if they're not able to make a positive ID, then you do not issue the citation. And then if somebody else is driving your car that is not a registered owner, like let's say I've got 4 vehicles and then 2 of my children drive them, their name is not on the registration. So then you can provide a certificate of innocence saying, so if I were to get mailed a citation, I look at the video, I look at the photographs that were sent and captured by the equipment to say, no, that wasn't me, that was my son. I can provide a certificate of innocence saying, no, that was not me driving the vehicle. And then that citation gets dropped and doesn't get issued.
So any teenager driving their parents' vehicle never get a citation.
Yeah. However, if you have honest and ethical parents, they might choose to. That is possible.
Depends on who gets the mail.
That's right.
You did a wonderful job with the summary that you overlooked. One of the most effective things about these citations, and that is when they come in the mail and your family sees them.
Yep.
And they go, "Mom's busted."
Well, and so it's funny because my father about 7, 8 years ago, he was issued a citation in Salem on downtown where you turn on to 22. They have photo red light that's activated there. And so he was all upset. I had gotten over to his house and he's like, look, there's a video. And I look at the video. I'm like, yeah, like the red light. The light was red before you even went into the intersection. No, it wasn't. So we watched it. Here. Yeah.
All those pink lights growing up. It was
Yeah.
pink. Yeah, it was pink.
Quite right, orangey.
And I've got to say big thank you to Salem PD and then also the lieutenant at Woodburn. They were great. I mean, sometimes you'll call up a neighboring agency and you'll ask for some help and everybody's busy, right? And so you maybe get one little chunk of it and you don't get it all, but they continued to provide us with all the data that we asked for and everything else, which was really helpful. Because it's a lot of what we were finding online was through ODOT and there were newspaper articles and things like that. And a lot of these jurisdictions they do a big media campaign to let everybody know 1 month before they go live. So typically, if it's a new piece of equipment at a new intersection, there's signage that's required on site. They either push something out either via social media on their website or in their weekly or monthly mailer. And they'll talk about the location and describe what it's there, what type of enforcement action it's going to be responsible for, whether it's the red light camera or whether or not it's going to be speed enforcement as well. And for the first month, it just generates warnings. And so you have kind of a training period for your staff as well to go through, and they have to match those warnings up and then they can send those warnings out. But that doesn't go on your DMV record. It doesn't get attached to your license. It's merely just a warning.
Right, question, can I ask a question?
You
about
bet,
this?
yeah.
So I think we're all concerned about having a safe community.
Sure.
So in the information that you received from those 2 departments, did it make a marked difference in the safety of those intersections or wherever they were placed?
So
That really made a difference. I read that, I thought maybe there might be a little bit more in regards to.
and there is, we get to Woodburn actually have some data on that. And he cautioned us, he says, their lieutenant told me, don't expect to see a drastic decrease in accidents at these intersections. That's not what the data is showing us. The data is showing us that we at times have less severe accidents. So the injuries are less severe, but not a marked reduction in those accidents. And I've got some data that I can give you to support that.
Yeah, you indicated that Woodburn's total accidents went from 14 to 13.
Yes.
last year.
That's
Not a big
Right.
impact.
Oh, no, definitely.
But I think here, people's greatest concern is not so much accidents as speeding. But
from 21 to 22, so their non-injury accidents went from 12 to 11. Injury accidents stayed 2 and 2. Total, obviously 14 and 13.
Right.
And so not a marked difference. I mean, pretty insignificant, but
And speeding, do we have statistics on just the speeding aspect of that at all?
we do. So it looks like speed actual violations.
Mhm.
Let's see, speed actual violations for 2021 were only for the last quarter, so 3 months. October of 21 through December of 21. So these aren't going to be a complete year for
Right.
them. So speed actual violations for the year of 2021 was 3,452. And then for the year 2022, it was 6,872.
And that's for the whole year, though.
Yes. And then speed available for prosecution was, there were 2,703 in 21. And of those, looks like, let's see, there were 2,602 issued. And then, let's see. And then, so there are some other variables. Sometimes the people don't keep their mailing address up on their license. And so they had about 199 returned in that period, in that quarter in 2021. 2022, they had 450 returned. Speed available for prosecution in 2022 was 4,705. And it looks like speed tickets issued were 4,397. And I think it should also be noted in that particular intersection, I think they have a volume of over 5 million vehicles that travel through there in a year. So it's a pretty busy intersection.
I did want to talk a little bit about the numbers, because the numbers included for Salem are so huge, 17.7 million vehicles. But I went to the 2018 transportation volume tables and ODOT. And if you take that 17 million and divide it by 365 and by 6 intersections, you come up with 8,000 cars a day. And according to those transportation volume tables, on Applegate or Maine, we have between 6,600 and 8,100, which in my book is comparable. So it's not the volume of traffic that would deter me from doing this. But in my mind, the big unknown is the impact of the streetscapes changes. Because they are designed to slow traffic. Now, I'm assuming, I know we had radar in town, speed signs in for a while. And I'm assuming that ODOT maybe take them down because of streetscapes.
So we still have those. We've deployed
Yeah.
them. We actually get calls for service where people have a complaint in a neighborhood, like on South 13th Street. We had run them up there. We've had them on, let's see, it'd be about the 2,700 block of Applegate was the last deployment we had. We found that those signs were very effective when the red and blue lights were turned on at a certain threshold. And so one of those signs is equipped with a flashing red and blue light.
Oh, yeah.
So we put that, would have been about the 800 block of Applegate Street. And when we looked at the data, we noticed, and I noticed it when I was coming into town to go to work in the morning, that people were hitting their brakes when they saw the red and blue lights. The problem
What's that remind you?
we got a letter from ODOT saying, hey, we didn't authorize that, and you can't do that on a state highway. So you need to turn that feature off. So.
Just driving south, when I was coming back from the airport through Junction City, they have one in their northbound lane. Right there, I mean, just like you described, the red and blue flashing lights. And their guys, Jenny picked me up, and so I was driving back. I'm like, they can't have that there. Listen, they have ours, they don't get to have theirs, but it is very effective.
It
I mean,
is.
It's like, because when you're even half a mile away, you assume that it's a police, a car, a patrol car up there with their lights on. And it's not until you get closer, like, oh, it's just a sign there telling me how fast all the vehicles are going. So they are very effective, but a little bit distracting as well. I mean, when you see a patrol car with lights on, that's like all of your attention. You don't really start paying attention to everything else that's around you. You're just kind of focused on what's there. But
My point is that we have tons of data from what we compared to the construction. And post-construction, we should be able to determine the impact of that design
Absolutely.
and whether this would be worth having.
Mhm.
Because in my opinion, I know that traffic is the biggest concern in town. Traffic and speeding is the biggest complaint we get. And justifiably so. But for me, the worst part is coming into town from the west on Applegate. Because when you come in on Main, there's a light there to stop you or slow you down. But when you're coming in from the west, there's nothing. So if I could put one in, that's probably where I put it. But in thinking about that, I also wonder if you have a concern about the traffic from the clinic being right there. And if we need to think about reducing the speed sooner. I don't know if we've talked to ODOT about that at all.
On Main Street.
No, on the Applegate.
So
Well,
currently they don't have an entrance or exit on Applegate.
Don't they? Bill?
No.
They've only authorized an entrance and exit on Main Street in that turn lane.
Oh, that's right. I forgot. that term.
But otherwise, yes, I would say so.
and it drops it drops down to 25. Before you hit the curves, most people don't start really hitting the brakes until they hit Dollar General.
Right.
Before you really start to see the speeds drop. If, people that are dropping their speed. It's usually not till past the railroad tracks and they first start making that turn. Just when I'm coming into town, that's when you see the 25 and I'm usually still at like 35 and slowing down, but definitely by the time you get past Dollar General, you're down at 25.
You should be.
But it's not out at the split. I mean, out the split, it still feels very safe at 35. It's very comfortable there. It's really not till you get to town. And even honestly, as you're driving through town, even driving in front of City Hall, it still feels pretty safe at 35 miles an hour, right? I mean, the speed limit's 25, but you got no bulb outs, you got nice wide area, you got businesses set back,
Not a
you
lot
got
of
landscaping there, there's no pedestrian traffic, there's no residences there. So, that's where we talk about engineering roads to slow traffic down. Right now, there's no pinch points, there's no anything. It just looks wide open right in front of you. So it feels very safe to go 35 miles an hour still. Which, as you mentioned, the streetscape project is going to narrow that in and put some pinch points in and create very clear crosswalks where it's going to raise awareness of vehicles as they're driving through. So generally speaking, I'm not opposed to looking at the radar signs, but honestly, I just feel like it's very premature. We're spending a lot of money on design and a lot of money on construction of streetscapes. I think it's going to have a significant impact on the speeds going through town. And, I feel like this is maybe a little premature and throwing money after
Oh,
what
yeah.
is there to slow traffic down when really we're doing that. Not through enforcement, not through radar signs, but through design elements that are going to help slow that traffic down, and how much we don't know yet, but it will be significant. And Lieutenant Gursky and I were talking earlier today even about, having a little bit more structured traffic enforcement plan, and we do traffic enforcement. It's a major component of what our police department does. But when staffing gets low and you've got burglaries and other stuff going on, we're not gonna have officers sitting out there hoping that they catch somebody that happens to be going, 15 or 20 miles over the speed limit. They're gonna be engaged in doing police work and public safety, not traffic enforcement. But I do think there's room for maybe a more formalized traffic enforcement plan. Fully staffed, we're gonna see between X number and X number of hours of traffic enforcement per shift, per week, per whatever. When our staff gets reduced down for whatever reason, injuries, illnesses, time off, staffing, vacancies, we're still gonna see traffic enforcement, but it's gonna be reduced and it'll be
Yeah.
reduced to this amount, right? And that's just gonna be, we gotta expect that. There's gonna be an impact, there'll be an impact to everything. But it doesn't drop to zero, right? We're still gonna have some traffic enforcement out there. I think we can do a better job as the city and as the department of kind of helping get that information out there, that we're never gonna not do traffic enforcement. We just may be reduced when we're down on hours, and we're gonna be very strategic about when we do that enforcement. We now may not come right out and tell the public what day and what time we're gonna be, where we're gonna be. Be strategic, and we look at our late Fridays and our, Sunday afternoons and Sunday evenings for people that tend to be coming through town. May not be as aware, and make sure that we're out and have a presence there to keep the speeds down, but. The most expensive traffic enforcement is a police officer in a vehicle. I mean, by far, that is the most expensive way, not just in direct cost, but in opportunity costs as well, and the work that those officers could be doing if they weren't doing traffic enforcement. So, Dave and I, again, we're talking on, there's a lot of solutions out there. This is one of them on more passive and other things we can do to get traffic enforcement at the lowest cost with the highest impact. We'd love to see the officers out there, but that's a very expensive way to do traffic enforcement. Is having a police officer in a police car out there, not doing other police work, sitting, essentially babysitting traffic. There's other things we can do. There's other ideas out there. There's a lot of different things we do that we, haven't really explored. We've really focused on streetscapes, what that can do. But David's got a whole toolbox of other tools that we can put out there that'll help with traffic enforcement. Some of which again takes some staffing to get set up, but other would be a significant reduction of what we're talking about for staffing on having police in vehicles. Doing just sitting behind the wheel. Our officers are out and about, so they're gonna see stuff and they're gonna, do that. And there is a case to be made for direct traffic enforcement at targeted times. But honestly, I would hate to think we just gonna have an officer and that's all he's doing is traffic enforcement all day long. I don't think that's a great use of our officers' time. There's a lot of other important things that we're doing. And again, we can deploy other tools to help with traffic enforcement that are much more cost effective.
Yeah. I would like to recommend that we table this until we have post streetscapes data.
Yes.
Well, I think it's also important to note that Salem, this is just one component of their traffic team. So they have a traffic team with their dedicated officers that just take crashes. They only do traffic enforcement, and then the photo red light and photo radar is just another tool or component to that program. So they help support them in intersections that maybe it's not safe to work traffic. Just because the volume of cars, they can't get out onto the highway or they can't get out onto that busy roadway safely. And so this is a good way for them to enforce traffic without having to put officers at risk in those busy intersections as well.
So what's next on?
Personnel updates. We have Scott Andrade. He graduated the academy a couple weeks ago. He's on graveyard with his FTO, field training officer Blake Bowers. Making a lot of progress. He had he did a really good job on UI Invest this weekend. We've got Colt Forest is in his first phase of training. Has not been to the academy yet, but goes November 13th. And right now he is training with field training officer Brandon Thurman. And he's doing really well. Better than I expected, actually, considering he hasn't had any formal training at the academy. So he's picking it up really well. If you guys have met or remember Coulter, he was our code enforcement officer and one of our applicants. And so we hired him to do that position. He really excelled at that. He was a really good fit within the department. He's a hard worker. He catches on really quickly. And so we're happy to have him go into the academy and eager to get him out of there and back on the road.
Has the academy improved its scheduling, so you're not waiting quite so long, or
Not exactly.
not exactly?
Right now, they are starting. I believe it's the 16th of this month. They're starting their first class that's going to be approximately 60 students, or normally it's between 30 and 40. I think there were 39 in Scott's class. This will be the largest class they've had. We've also got the next class, which is November 13th, when Coulter will be attending, and that's slated to be a 60-person class as well. So it's going to be interesting to see how they accommodate that many folks, because they've only got so many bays at the range to do firearms training. I don't know that you can do all 60 at once. You can't have all 60 people out on the emergency vehicle operations track at the same time. They've got Scenario Village where when they get into that part of their training, they're doing different scenarios. It's basically a little city that they've built, and you get dispatched to a call. You respond to the call. You've got role players within Scenario Village. Sometimes it's a robbery, sometimes it's a domestic. It might be at an apartment or a house, or a bar type setting. And so I don't know how they're going to do that. Plus, it's going to be extended because of they get a week, their staff gets a week off for Thanksgiving. So then they come back to us for that week and work. And then they'll get a week at Christmas, and then a week for New Year's. And then the academy has in-service, I believe, in February. And so we're really adding 4 weeks to the 16 weeks. So this is going to be like a 20-week academy overall by the time they have their breaks factored in.
Wow.
And then Ken and I are gonna sit down and look at that code enforcement officer position. There's a few things in the job description we'll want to tweak, a few responsibilities. With the city having our own planner, there's some enforcement that the planner can do, fences, buildings that don't have planning approvals, ADUs that show up in people's backyards without any permits or anything. So some of that the planner will be able to do. We weren't able to do that with our county employee planner, with our agreement with them. Or the planner in-house, those are things that we have added into the planner's job description to do some of that initial enforcement. Or at least the initial contact, and then if there's non-compliance, then we'll look to the code enforcement officer to go out and actually write the citations and whatnot. So we just need to update the code enforcement officer job description to incorporate those few changes. And then we'll be putting that back out again and trying to get another code enforcement officer on, because that really made a difference having Coulter do that position. Made a lot of headway really quickly, but there's still a lot of work to be done.
And is that still going to remain a part-time position, do you know?
It'll still be part-time. Yeah, it's still part-time. And one of the nice parts about keeping Coulter on board is he's got all that experience, he's got the knowledge, he knows the households and the properties that were problematic before. So he's still continuing to do some of that work on top of what he's doing now. He's kind of the go-to. But really we need a part-time person dedicated to just doing that. So it's not falling on our sworn full-time officers to be doing that kind of work.
How many people is the full staff of the police department?
7 patrol, and then a chief and a lieutenant.
That,
Part-time enforcement and our office, one office staff.
oh yeah, and how is the new office person?
It's fantastic.
Is she,
We got really, really lucky.
oh,
That's so
she's
good.
keeping all of you in line?
She is. She's doing a fantastic job.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's
we're
so
lucky to
good.
have her, for sure.
Remind me, what's her name?
Katie Miller.
Yeah, I should be able to remember that.
It's just-
Yeah.
Even that's the dog in her work area, which I think he appreciates.
Oh, sweetie. Okay, sounds good. Next was.
On to the measure 110.
Yeah.
So there's been a coalition formed that is looking to either get this back on the ballot to essentially make some significant changes. They call them fixes and improvements to 110. That would be one of the mechanisms to get this change. The other one would be to have the legislature and the governor push those changes. At this point, we're not sure which one's going to happen first. And the coalition's working really hard to try and get this amended or get these fixes put in place. There are two different versions of it that they're moving forward with right now. So Measure B is one that will create crime to use. It basically it recriminalizes controlled substance use in public. It mandates drug treatment for drug dependent persons convicted of charges of drug possession, certain misdemeanor property crimes such as shoplifting or car break-ins. Recriminalizes possession of fentanyl, methamphetamine, heroin, cocaine, and other hard drugs, and creates a conditional discharge diversion procedure for those charged with drug possession. And then Measure A has those same components, but goes several layers deeper and trying to address some of the other issues that we're seeing. One of them is so it automatically expunges misdemeanor drug possession convictions upon completion of a drug treatment program and probation. It increases penalties for manufacture and delivery of controlled substances for repeat offenders, or if the delivery causes death. Creates crime of possession of tableting or encapsulating machines, which is basically what they're using to make the fentanyl pills. They're using like a pill press or a machine that they actually mimic other controlled substances that are prescribed. So we have to test those or send them off to the lab to be testing or to be tested. Defines delivery of a controlled substance to include possession with the intent to transfer to another. Transfers Measure 110 grant program to Alcohol and Drug Policy Commission. And then requires that same commission to fund evidence informed prevention, treatment, recovery support, community harm reduction, and enforcement services. And so I think, and I don't know how much you guys know about Measure 110 and the impact it had on us being able to enforce drug crimes, but we don't have the authority to write search warrants to search certain pieces of property, whether it be a bag or a car or a house, if there's not a crime attached to that. And right now, possession under 2 grams of whether it be heroin or methamphetamine or cocaine is not a crime, it's a violation. And so that's a pretty significant amount. I mean, it's definitely a user quantity, maybe even plus some ending. And so that's where it becomes really difficult for us for the enforcement piece. Prior to 110 passing, we had a drug treatment court or program that was already in the court over at Benton County. So they were utilizing that. I think there's some things, the treatment cards that we hand out that we give with the citations, doesn't appear that those have been all that effective.
No.
And so I think it definitely needs to be modified. I'm hoping that this won't go to the ballot, I'm hoping that we'll see some results sooner than that. And it looks like they've got some services built into this for recovery and hopefully fixing the root cause of the problem.
What are your feelings about A versus B?
I think the more services that we can get, as long as they're going to be adequately funded and they're actually going to follow through with it, I think the more of those services we can get, the better off we're going to be. I don't really see any cons with version A. Version B obviously has been stripped of some of those other programs and some of the other criminal components with regards to the tableting and making that a crime to possess those machines. There's no real legitimate person unless you're making vitamins at home for a pill press like that.
I've never heard of anyone making vitamins at home, but I've never thought about it.
Well, and not only that, I think it will be helpful if they transfer Measure 110 grant program to this Alcohol and Drug Policy Commission as well, to have somebody oversee it.
And why is that a good thing relative to what's?
Let's see who's overseeing it right now. I don't think there's a whole lot of oversight. And I think that's really problematic in trying to get those people the services they need. Plus, we can't compel them because it's only a monetary fine. That's it. You know, whereas in the past, if it was a crime, then you can compel people. That can be part of your sentences to go to treatment and complete that treatment program. And if you don't, then you can be incarcerated for it.
You know, I thought it was interesting. I thought drug court, I read an article a while back that we no longer have drug court, correct? In that county?
So my understanding was they were still doing drug court in the county, but I may be wrong.
I just thought that there was, you know, from what I'd read, that there was a lot of success throughout the years with that.
That program wasn't entry level, so it wasn't the first time
Right.
user, you get convicted of it and you get sentenced to drug court. It was only for the chronic offenders.
Right.
And there was definitely a component of accountability there where they had a program that they were a part of and they were status checks every week. I believe they went to court every Wednesday. And they basically had to give an update. What have you done? Are you completing the steps in the program? If you didn't do that, then there was jail beds available and you were sanctioned right away. It may only be for 24 hours, but nonetheless, there was a direct consequence for not doing what you agreed to do and what the court ordered you to do. And so we did see some success with that. I think the important thing is there's got to be follow through, and at some point, you've got to break that cycle of addiction and get them the services they need. And you're not going to do that with a $100 fine and an optional phone call.
And I was reading this morning about an article in GT about Sweet Home, about how they've had 35 overdose deaths for the unhoused in Sweet Home this year. And how there's just not facilities available to get, they're not getting help. And being unhoused is not making it easier, but the problem is also the drug portion of that. Is not just solely the unhoused situation. They're unhoused with in need of treatment.
And I think that's the big problem is there's not enough facilities that can take those people in when they're ready to go in. And it may just be for a short window of time that they're clean for a moment and they're ready to make that decision, or they've hit rock bottom. And if you tell that person that they have to wait for a month. I mean, their need is urgent. They need to get it and get that treatment now. I mean, it's kind of like if you break your arm and the doctor says, sorry, I can't treat you for a month.
Yeah.
I mean, it'd be a pretty painful experience.
What's behind measurement?
Question. There were some out-of-state funding sources for that. I don't have the specific.
Seems so odd. I mean, why? But maybe there were people who were supportive of drug use.
There was a lot of tie with Measure 110 and criminalization of drugs with the race factor that, people of minority status were being targeted, and that was being done through these drug convictions that were taking place. So a lot of it was tied to race and the desire to reduce the amount of, minorities that were getting put in jail by the criminals tacked on from drug use. And so that was a lot of the effort, was to try to eliminate a lot of those arrests for drug use, because by and large, the minority populations were the ones that had the highest number of convictions. So that was a lot of the effort, and that was coming off of George Floyd and everything else. I think that was a lot of the sentiment that pushed it. Social justice argument.
Want to welcome Counselor Crocker. She's here with. Thank you so much for joining us. No, not a problem. Just want to acknowledge your presence here. All right, so Lieutenant, what else do we have that's on that agenda?
That's it.
Okay,
3 items.
so I have one thing from a business owner. I received an email. And she was wondering about how with the new, I don't know, what is the sleeping, what's the bill number on that? On the unhoused can sleep between, there's a
8 and 8.
yes. How is our city, what is the city seeing as a result of that? And are we seeing a large number of unhoused that are now taking lodging that you
I
could?
A single one. No.
Same numbers we had before the.
We haven't seen anybody take advantage of it. I mean, the graveyard staff are not reporting that they're seeing anybody sleeping in vehicles or putting up tents or anything. We're not seeing it in parks, natural spaces. So we're still not the same as we were before.
She asked about Mary's River, and I didn't have any information about Mary's River Park, so we're not having any problems out that way with
No.
anything that's.
I can't remember. I think the last call for service we had in Marys River Park was back June or July. And that wasn't that, it was related to a van that was towed out there. It had been involved in a crash out west and they had one tow. Their insurance would provide them with a tow and they thought they could sleep there and camp there. We went and told them that they couldn't and they ended up moving it and we haven't had a problem since. So.
A couple calls to City Hall. The rodeo grounds, but I just explained that's just the outdoor day camp that's out there and okay. Cause they've got tarps and stuff out there and when you're driving by, it kind of looks like a homeless camp been set up. It's like. Outdoor school. Oh, that's cool. Send them to the website.
What are you hearing in response to streetscapes? Are you getting any complaints or?
No, Chelsea and I had kind of made ourselves available and announced that we'd be available after last month's Chamber of Commerce luncheon. And we kind of stuck around a little bit and she fielded a couple questions and I did kind of informally, but there was nobody stuck around specifically to talk to us about streetcapes. We didn't hear any complaints from business owners. We had one business owner here close by City Hall that was really concerned about how like his specific property and how it was affecting the curb was going to affect his driveway and things. And we put him in touch with ODOT and I kind of worked through it a little bit and found a solution that works. So there's little one-offs where it's just, you know, where the driveway is going, where the curb cut's going to go and how that design is going to work for their business. Mostly property owners that haven't looked at it ahead of time. They wait till it's out there and getting formed up in front of them. It's like, oh, wait a minute, what's this? What's going on? And so it's just getting educated and understanding what the finished product is going to look like and how it's going to work. But really nothing. I mean, we're not, to be fair, we're not getting a lot of like positive, hey, this is terrific either. It's consistent.
Terrific, yeah.
Tolerating the traffic, I do think. I will say they've not having them work on Fridays through the summer, I think was a good call on their part. So Fridays and Sundays all summer long, we haven't had any construction traffic issues. We've not seen it over the weekends, we've not seen it evenings, so you know, them working their 10-hour shifts Monday through Thursday, I think really helped us through the summer. As far as not having negative impacts there.
Has the 7th Street issue died down or is it still going?
Everything, we gained a couple feet there. They ended up having to replace that curb anyway, so we've moved it back 2 feet, redesigned that. Nobody said thank you, but
Thank you.
yeah. But you know, we've not heard any new concerns about that. Yeah, I mean, overall, they're just plugging away on it. We did get some complaints about the use of the lot in front of True Value. They were starting to pack gravel and store materials there, which was not ever part of their original agreement. And it was for the trailer and office vehicles and stuff coming and going, but we were very clear that they weren't to store materials there, and they were, and so they had big front loaders and trucks stuff come in and out of that parking lot, which raised some concern with some of the other nearby businesses. So we got that complaint and got that addressed, and by the end of the week they had all of the gravel off-site, so they were responsive there, which was appreciative. So I mean, you know, I would say there's zero complaints, but the complaints we're dealing with, and the contractor's been pretty responsive on. A lot of concerns about the elevation change in front of the Busy Hen versus there, and those will get sorted out when the pavement gets torn up and dropped down. And so
I was amazed at the difference. They're not kidding when they say abrupt edge.
so overall positive.
I was kind of surprised at the comments in the museum's communication piece. There were some complaints about the impact of streetscapes.
You know, our neighbors are all talking about how they're gonna like, if I'm understanding correctly, there's a space where there'll be some grass or, and they're like, oh, we're gonna like that landscaping right there. I'm like, yeah, it's gonna be, they saw the sprinklers going in and there's gonna be landscape, and it's, yes, there should be something coming in right here. And they were really pleased about how that will look. softening all the cement work. That would be-
Yeah, right now it's just a lot of cement.
Yeah, it looks like a lot of
Rock
cement.
and ditches.
Yeah.
And don't forget those beautiful inlays.
Yeah.
I went out to look for one, but I couldn't find it. Chelsea said it was 10th and Main.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I'm not sure,
It's not 10th. I walked all around the intersection.
yeah, I'm not sure where they put them in. Chelsea's gone out and made sure that they had them oriented
Yes.
correctly
yeah,
and
that's
stuff.
what It's telling me.
I want to put them posting or somewhere where they are, posting on the website with, you know.
They'll do the way
check out
till after
the-
construction
Yeah.
stuff.
I realized that. Illegal.
Yeah.
But,
Hey. Diane, do you have any questions?
I assume you've already talked about the radar
Yeah.
thing and you've got all the answers and,
We've
okay.
covered it.
Actually, I don't think we did get, we're talking about revenue. Does.
That was
Oh, yeah.
Kristen first.
That was Christopher's question. So is it kind of,
That was one of the things that they cautioned us on is, because both agencies, warned us to be wary of photo radar companies' marketing schemes. Both agencies said revenue number estimates were exaggerated and did not include tickets that were rejected.
Okay, so. it
and there was a
roughly-
there was a high rejection rate. Did you, on that thing? I was kind of surprised by, that reject-
50%. something like
yes.
that, yeah.
I was kind of surprised by that.
Woodburn saw, 70% of red light citations were rejected in 2023. And again, it's. If you sell a car and you don't re-register it and you just get a temp permit, or you go in and you just renew the registration and it's not in your name, and then they go to try and match up the DMV photo with the registration information that's not accurate, that wouldn't be one that you could issue. So that's a big problem. And we see that just working traffic here, where people aren't re-registering their vehicles. They've got 30 days to do so. And after that, we can get you citations for it, but that's not one that we commonly issue citations for. And then during COVID, their access to DMV was fairly limited. And so that was kind of a compounding problem. And in fact, Woodburn PD elected not to turn on their speed on green during COVID because they didn't want to add any additional burden to people that weren't working and things like that. So they waited until kind of got through that time period. And so I think there's still a lag. People are still trying to catch up. I've heard of people just now going back into DMV to try and get vehicles registered and, licenses renewed. And we're seeing a lot of that. There was a lot of misinformation out there where people thought that was just going to go for a long period of time. We're continue to run into people, well, because of COVID, I couldn't get my license, renewed.
Sounds like a lame excuse.
For a year now.
Small dealer. Dealership. And we're supposed to take care of all that for us, and we heard from them for months, that I can't get it, or they're out and they're backed up. And they actually had to issue us a new 90-day temporary plate or dealership
Yep.
plate. Because I'm still working on it as soon as I can get it, so it wasn't that we weren't doing it, it was we paid the dealership to do that for us, and then the dealership's like, we just haven't been able to get to it. And whether that was DMV or that was dealership, but like I said, it was a smaller dealership. But they just issued new temporary, 3-month dealer plates for us to be able to use. That's Isaac's car. He was going off to college. And we're like, we still don't have plates.
Another thing I want to mention was the size of the department in Salem and Woodburn. I mean, are much larger in comparison to what we have in Philomath as far as manpower. I mean, the numbers, sheer numbers. And so that's something I think we would also have to consider, if it takes a lot of officer time, depending what we utilize. That would be a consideration, just department sizes.
So you have to have either a sworn personnel that's reviewing those, or you're going to have to hire civilian personnel that's been trained by the vendor and holds that level of, I guess that certificate, which is, I believe they called it a traffic agent. And they can testify in court. And then additionally, they're the ones that confirm the identity of the person and whether or not it's a valid ticket to be issued. So there is a significant amount of time that would be used to do that. They're using some part-time staff. Woodburn has, I believe, 2 or 3 retired Portland Police Bureau folks. They actually work as bailiffs in their court. And then they also, this is one of their side duties. And Salem utilizes some of the light duty staff and they also have some full-time staff.
Aren't we still down one or two officers
Well, we've got,
from the max?
yeah, we don't, so we've got 3 right now that are not on their own. They're not solo and they're several months away from being so. I mean, we've got. In fact, the third one hasn't even been officially hired. We've given him a conditional offer and he's in backgrounds right now. So we're working on completing his background before we can give him a formal offer and then get him an academy date. But we have Coulter is scheduled to go to the academy November 13th. Scott's been out for a couple of weeks now and he's on his first phase of FTEP. And we won't really know how long that's going to take until we can really evaluate his performance and find out when he's ready.
My point being is you probably don't have enough people to serve as a radar specialist, so it'd have to be someone from outside the department, probably. Is that what we would say?
Or we'd have to create a position for that, whether it be a civilian position that was, that received that level of training from the vendor or, add another staff member to do that. So,
Our recommendation was to table it until we have a clear understanding of the impact of streetscapes on speeding.
Oh, that's a good idea.
We have,
Very smart.
so we have tons of radar data from prior to streetscapes and we can
compare the difference.
Yeah.
Yeah.
see that.
Yeah, I was disappointed in, what was it? One less fatality of the whole, whatever. I mean, the numbers were not impressive
Mhm.
on the difference. We think that it's gonna make a difference, but that's not what that data was showing us. Do you have any data on the revenue? How much percentage wise that goes out cost versus how much they make from the tickets?
let me take a look at what. See what we learn.
He's looking, the other number that would be interesting at some point to look at would be. Of all those citations issued and mailed, how many end up in front of the judge? And are taking up time with the court clerk and the judge and. Is our court now, we have days where it's. Maybe half full and other days it's pretty full.
Yeah.
So if you're talking about adding another 30, 60, 90 people to come before the judge because they want to dispute the ticket that they were sent in the mail, a lot of them are just going to pay it. There's going to be percentages of those that want to be in front of the judge and say, nope, wasn't me, or contest it. And what is that going to do to your court fees and requirements for the judge to,
So there's cost there is what you're saying.
there's costs there as well. So it'd be interesting to see what percentage of people that are issued citations
From the court.
pay them outright and what percentage come to court.
Preferring providing revenue.
Well, we can get that data when we get.
Yeah, like
closer.
those are already done.
Okay, yeah.
So, we haven't had a meeting since the National Night Out thing. How was that for our city? And I wasn't in attendance there. I was out of town, but since we haven't had a police committee meeting since then, that was in August?
Almost August, yeah, it was very well attended. We always get a good turnout. It's always a fun function. We get, the National Guard comes out, they do a fun thing for the kids. We get the fire department comes out there. I think the sheriff's office brought their boat out and Marine Patrol. But yeah, that's always a well-attended event. We always look forward to that every year. And I think the citizens do too. It's a time where they can.
Absolutely.
We're very approachable. And a lot of people have questions where they don't want to call and pester the police. They don't want to come in and bother us. And so it's a nice place for them to be able to feel comfortable to ask those questions.
I absolutely agree. We've attended for years and.
I went and it was well attended and kind of a fun atmosphere. There were some information tables, but it seemed a lot lighter than some of the information.
And chili cook-off was a huge
It was a
success.
huge success. We had a ton of fun. Everybody did. Hey,
I attend the Willamette Criminal Justice and they were kind of bragging about how Willamette didn't win this time. I got a little uncomfortable. You did win something.
We won the law enforcement division, so we did win that one.
Oh, and didn't you win the People's Choice or something
We
like that?
didn't win people.
Laws.
No,
Maybe that's what they were talking about. I can't remember what it was,
Yeah.
but
Was Corvallis or back then?
it was Corvallis' management team, I believe,
they pretty arrogant about the whole thing.
Yeah. As well, so they keep coming back, you know,
Yeah.
participate. If we win.
That's
I think last year was a Floma slate. It was like Floma PD, Floma Frolic and Rodeo, Floma La Roquita. It was like down the board. It was like, thanks for coming. It's like hosting a softball tournament and then crushing every team. Eventually they stopped coming, so.
Councilor McMorrin believes the city council should have a team next year. So
Yeah.
Would they be allowed?
Yeah.
Really?
I think Ken's already talked to City of Corvallis and talked to me and
Same.
about maybe having cities having a team as well. Have a little more competition and have some of the commissioners. and
I think,
City of
Okay.
Corvallis.
I think we walk away with it because I make a pretty mean show.
Okay, I was gonna say, who's gonna be the first one? So it will not be me, although I do fine actually. but it's gonna be pressure for me.
And what's on schedule as far as public outreach? What's the next thing where you'll be, will be making some kind of a.
Trunk or treat is probably our next biggest one. We have a patrol car. We usually, depending on the weather, we have our awning out there. There's usually, let's see, Ken, myself and whatever officers are on duty that day come out for that. And that's it's a ton of fun.
Do you hand out candies?
And interact with the kids, the parents. I mean, that's a fun day. It's a lot of fun.
This year they're gonna hold it at the museum. I don't know if you saw the memo, it came out on Facebook, I think just today. Rather than trying to get through the downtown, they're just gonna have the loop around the museum.
Another smart decision. That's
Yeah,
great.
so that'll be good.
Good parking by the old Napa on that side, on the east side.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you'll still have to park to get there, but at least as far as where the kids are walking, they're not gonna be walking along uneven. ditches and
Yeah.
trenches.
lost.
Or for the park or the schools, you know, there's the bike. paths and stuff.
Street crossings and everything else, so they're just gonna avoid that. And it's- Yeah, but the museum, I think the businesses like having the kids downtown. Under normal circumstances, and I think with the streetscapes and the wider sidewalks, all that, it'll be ideal. But it's gonna be another, probably not, maybe next year.
I think we're even pulling people from Corvallis. We noticed that
Yeah.
last year. Folks, I mean, it's a nice condensed little area, safe. There's a lot of participation from the businesses.
Yeah, I'll have to get that really out there because I hadn't heard that it was at the museum.
Just came out
So,
today,
okay.
yeah, it just came out today, so it's just starting to. spread.
We'll have to have a big one when Streetscapes is done, really a big
Yeah.
celebration. Good.
When is the finish date, more or less?
It'll be next fall, so maybe about this time next year, in my mind, middle October, end of October. Next year, but there's still a lot of variables that can move that date forward or backward.
Has city council ever had a trunk or treat booth?
No, but you could, if you wanted to have one. I usually jump on and help out with the frolics, but the city staff, we've done one a few times. Yeah, if the city council wants to do a booth.
It's a Tuesday
do
night.
Something.
We could discuss that.
We'd have to discuss it soon. I guess.
Yes, coming up. I just like having I still get. You know, neighborhood kids and the students and it's so
I
fun.
have to tell you, I've hidden some years. We turn out the lights and I go hidden, hiding.
Students want to come in, they come in the door, and I'm like, oh,
And now, I'm not supposed to remember who every one of them are.
and not a lot. This. Said that. It's
You
fun.
guys are shattering your image.
No, it's only me. She answers the door. And it was. Especially when I was still teaching, was exhausted, and so I.
Do you want me to reach out to the council about the city council having a
Trunk or treat.
trunk or treat? I mean, I'll take.
I would volunteer.
Hey,
It's
31st?
31st, they're doing it on
Halloween.
Tuesday. The 31st,
At like in the afternoon, like 3 or 4. or
3 to 5, I think it is. If I remember right, yeah.
It's always sunny and
Yeah.
nice.
The elementary school is still doing their thing that evening. They do something at the elementary school. They do something in the gymnasium for that night as well. So it's like a full. Yeah, kids can be very sugared up.
To halls or something like that.
Yeah,
It's awfully scary to
I
me.
think it's, yeah, I don't know if that's been Halloween night or if it was like the weekend before.
Yeah, in the forest. Yeah, and people would reach out and grab their ankles and yeah, I think my husband worked there a couple of times. so.
Yeah.
Not my thing to scare children.
For Goslar and homeless, having the kids
Yeah.
sleep at the.
In the cardboard.
Yes, in the cardboard
boxes,
boxes,
yeah.
yeah. That too. Well, is there anything else, Officer Gursky, that you wanted to address the committee?
Not that I can think of. no.
I ask this every time. When is Chief Rubin retiring? Because he has a date. It is in April. Okay.
That's so good.
And so then there will be at least another position to fill. I mean, I realize you're gonna go up, but in your position, will you?
Yeah, if anybody knows of a good police chief, let me know.
We do.
What's up?
That's right.
But for the sergeant, is that, am I correct? You're a sergeant? Lieutenant, excuse me, I don't know the differences. Okay, I know I'm supposed to, but I don't. Lieutenant, will you bring somebody up that's already here, or will you try to hire from out?
We're gonna have to discuss that, but I'd like to promote somebody from within.
Yeah, that's nice. And then hire somebody for the beginning jobs. That's good.
We've got such a great culture, the Philomath PD right now. They're really respected throughout our region, even throughout the state. And that culture it doesn't just happen, right? And you can't just, you don't even really train that. It's there and it builds with time. And it's a concerted effort. It's intentional. And I think Ken and David both have done a great job of getting that culture, but the officers have bought in. The officers we have there now, they're on board, and we've not always had that. We've had officers in the past that haven't been on board. Good officers, but they don't buy in fully, and those officers have found their way out of Philomath PD. But the officers we have now, Lieutenant Gersko back me, are phenomenal. They've all bought in, the culture's strong. And anytime you bring in new people to that, especially management level type folks into that, you run the risk of somebody wanting to do it their way. Which is going to be different than really the way that Philomath PDs function right now. So
Why did you look at me when you said that?
they get to get in contact with everyone.
Sure.
It really does go a long way to anytime. I mean, this is just HR 101s. Anytime you can promote from within and maintain that culture, maintain the history and all that information.
Reward their good work.
Right.
By.
When you have an agency that's struggling a little bit, that's a good time to bring in somebody new and to go through it. But when you have an agency that's right now top of the class and doing a great job, it's a bad time to start shuffling everybody around and bringing in a bunch of new ideas and new people and.
Okay.
So,
Aren't a lot of our officers homegrown though?
Yeah.
2 or 3 are, at least.
And well, and not only that, but our field training officers too, that's an important part of that training program is making sure that they buy into Ken and I's philosophy and that they're training people, the way that we want them
Yeah.
trained and they're focusing on what the community expects from us as well. So that's a critical piece. If you've got high turnover with your training officers, then it's not a good thing.
Right.
That's so important. I was in Tillamook a few weeks ago and one of the neighbors is an officer there and he was mentioning this. What's where you're from? I said, Philomath. He goes, oh. I said, right. He goes, oh, you guys have a really safe, I guess our stats are we're a really safe town, thanks in major part to our department. And so the reputation of how, the community that we are, thanks. Which is. So thank you for that. We appreciate being in a safe town and having that reputation and having that, having us known for that. So that's important, that we have an environment, that it's a good place to live, good place to raise a family.
After your meeting, public safety talking about traffic.
Oh, yeah, no.
Good spot.
Good. All right. If nothing, else, anything else? If not, we'll adjourn. I just wanted to do that.